The Chargers and Rams meet today at SoFi. Autopsies are coming in on the UCLA football season. And if you want Jeanie Buss to fall in love with you at first sight, the first step, stop reading. Be illiterate. We'll explain. Hi, I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos morning report. January 1st, 2023. Happy New Year. I'm in a glorious mood. And by the way, speaking of glorious, it is also Sunday. Take a moment. Appreciate what you have. Thank God for it. And if you like the content that we put out about LA sports, clickety-clack the like button. Clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notifications bell. Hit that. It'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist. And yeah, comment. I like hearing from you guys. Before we go through the news and notes, looking at the scoreboard, Philadelphia outlasts the LA Kings 4-2. Philip Deneau scored. He has a point in 7 consecutive games. But Jonathan Quick has not won a game in over a month now. Indiana 131, Clippers 130. Paul George scored a season-high 45 points in the loss. Do you remember all those rumors how the Indiana Pacers were going to send 2 of their best players to the Lakers? Why would they do that? Look at the standings. Even though they're in different conferences, Indiana is a half game worse than the Clippers. Why would you bust up that? Meanwhile, the Rams are taking on the Chargers at 1:25. We'll break down the game in just a moment. Number 11, UCLA basketball is at Washington at 4 p.m. The Bruins are looking for their 10th consecutive win. USC basketball at Washington State at noon. Now, how the Trojans continue to win is a good question, because only Boogie Ellis and Drew Peterson are averaging double digits in scoring per game. I don't really feel comfortable saying Rams versus Chargers is the battle for LA. I mean, both teams right now, you look at them, the Rams have been to 2 Super Bowls since they came back to LA. They won last year's Super Bowl. Meanwhile, the Chargers are in the playoffs right now. The Rams have already been eliminated in defending their title. I'm still looking forward to watching this game, but I just don't think it's going to be this high-scoring shootout that we all thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year. Now, starting with the Chargers, they just don't have a whole hell of a lot to play for other than civic bragging rights. As I mentioned, they're already in the playoffs. And no matter what happens to them for the rest of the regular season, they're going to be playing on the road in the first round. They can improve their position, but it's always going to be a road game. I would argue that maybe their big goal for this game is, yes, to win, but to do so without getting injured. For example, take a look at defensive end Jeanie Buss. He's going to play today for the first time in 3 months after blowing out his groin in week 3. But he will be on a snap count. So how much of an impact is that going to be? Meanwhile, Derwin James is going to be out. He is in the concussion protocol. So we know that the Chargers defense has been playing extremely well. But do you take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you want these players healthy for a playoff run? And then if you're a Bolts fan, you have to ask what the hell is happening to the offense. I mean, if I told you that the Chargers were devastated by injuries all year, still reached the playoffs, you would be thinking that Justin Herbert has been playing great every single game. And that is not the case. Matter of fact, if you looked at Herbert, he's thrown 0 touchdowns in his last 2 games. He's also thrown 3 interceptions in those last 2 games. Hell, in Indianapolis last week, the guy was sacked 4 times. So are the Chargers, even though they've got a 3-game winning streak, are they really on all cylinders? Meanwhile, I've been saying this for weeks, the Rams easily could have acted like a bunch of spoiled children. You know, hey, we've got our rings, screw you guys, we're going to the Bahamas, and then Sunday we'll just roll over and play dead for 3 hours. They could have done that, but they didn't. They've won 2 out of their last 3. They even dropped 50 points on Denver last week. So when you put those factors all together, there is so much about this game that I do not trust. For example, if I told you to take the Chargers, I would be saying that I think Brandon Staley won't make a stupid, pointlessly risky play call just so he could show how smart he is to Sean McVay. If I tell you to take the Chargers, I'm asking the worst run defense in football to bottle up Cam Akers, who scored 3 touchdowns last week. I'm saying, oh yeah, take the Chargers. Don't be concerned about Justin Herbert at all. And that's not true. I am concerned about Justin Herbert. He hasn't been playing well for the last 3 weeks. But what if I tell you to take the Rams? I'm telling you to take a team with only 5 wins over a team that's already qualified for the playoffs. If I tell you to take the Rams, I'm saying Baker Mayfield can do what Miami couldn't do, what Tennessee couldn't do, what Indy couldn't do, and that's score more than 17 points in a game. To do so means I think that one terrific game against Denver when the Broncos clearly gave up means that the Rams solved all their problems, and I don't believe that for a moment. So if I were to basically tell you about this game, I would say the smart money is on the Chargers, but I still believe the Rams are pulling off the upset. It's a hunch. Here's why. Every 4 games in an NFL season, your team is going to stink up the joint. That's why you don't see long 7, 8 game winning streaks in the NFL. You watch a game, you scratch your head. You're saying this team is on this amazing winning streak. They should be kicking the hell out of this lousy team. Why are they losing? And it's because it's extremely difficult to get an NFL team up for every game, week after week after week after week. Eventually, the rah-rah stuff wears out and the team bails it in and then they get upset. The Bolts have a 3-game winning streak. I have a hunch that this is that 4th week where the team, even though the Chargers are better than the Rams, flat out lays an egg in front of everybody. I think the Rams can control the clock with the running game. I think Brandon Staley will be highly motivated to show the Rams that he's the next big thing in coaching, which means he'll probably make at least one foolish game call. I think Jalen Ramsey gives either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams a tough day. I think this is going to be a low-scoring fist fight, and if it's a low-scoring fist fight, it's anybody's game, and I would lean toward the Rams. Don't take that to a casino. I don't necessarily know how much I believe what I'm selling. Somebody had to go in order to make room for Joey Bosa. It's running back Sony Michel. That's mildly surprising in the sense that Michel's a name we've all heard of. He was the top back with the Patriots. He won Super Bowls there. Played for the Super Bowl with the champion Rams last year, but with the Bolts, he has not touched the rock since week 11. He only rushed for 106 yards this year and 0 touchdowns. The Rams are also making roster moves, but that's more about the long-term future instead of immediate impact. They cut an offensive lineman, Bobby Evans. It's actually a reasonable move in the sense that going into this season, it was believed Evans had to fight his ass off to keep his spot, and yet he only started 4 games on a team that desperately needed stability on the offensive line. He is the second player from the class of 2019 to get the axe, the other being running back Darrell Henderson. Evans was taken in the 3rd round from Oklahoma. I've been skimming over autopsies for UCLA football. On the sports desk, when I was a reporter, we would tell you it's a year-end recap. On the desk, we would call it an obituary or an autopsy because they were dead. Anyway, I was reading the LA Times autopsy of the Bruins, and I have a few bones to pick. Now, the writer says fix the defense. And yeah, that's reasonable. He also adds that upgrading a cornerback is a good idea. Again, no problem. But, Mr. Volch, UCLA is not known as linebacker U. That is Penn State. Moreover, I would say that the defensive backfield is a far bigger issue than linebacker for UCLA. Also, Ben Bolch made a big deal about how Chip Kelly never pays attention to the defense during the game. That's not necessarily as big a problem as he might have made it out to be. When the Rams first hired Sean McVay, for example, McVay turned around, he hired Wade Phillips to run everything on the defense. So during the game, Sean McVay would actually be sketching out offensive adjustments and let Wade Phillips do the play calling. So I don't necessarily think about Kelly's engagement during the game as the issue. What is the issue, in my opinion, is that you only have a limited number of blue chip defensive recruits. You only have a limited number of scholarships to offer. If UCLA wants to upgrade its defense, Chip Kelly has to make appearances on the recruiting trail with defensive prospects. So the problem with Kelly, in my opinion, is not necessarily on the field. It is in the recruit's house. But you let me know what you think. Heard a lot from UCLA people over the last couple of days. Once again, LeBron James is cranking out, or I should say CBS Sports is cranking out content about where the Lakers should trade LeBron James. They've had 2 stories in the last week. One was the top 5 best landing spots, and then they went so far as to rank all 29 other teams as to which ones would be most inclined to roll the dice on LeBron. Here's where it comes from. Say the Lakers lose. Say LeBron gets frustrated, blows off a little steam. What the press is trying to tell you is that's not steam, that's smoke. And where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm telling you it's LeBron blowing off steam, and that's not fire. So let's repeat the obvious, because apparently CBSSports.com wants clickbait just as much as everyone else on social media. 1, LeBron James has not asked for a trade. 2, the Lakers do not make a habit out of trading superstars because they know the NBA is built on superstars and they're willing to put up with crap in order to make superstars happy. And number 3, of course, Anthony Davis might be back on the roster in as little as 3 weeks. Now, the only time I can recall the Lakers trading a superstar was when they traded Shaquille O'Neal to Miami. The only reason they did that, Shaquille was wanting more money under the salary cap, which couldn't be done. And they already had a superstar. Does anybody remember Kobe Bryant? On the lighter side, here is a piece of Lakers history that might sound like the plotline of a 1990s romantic comedy. Jeanie Buss has recently told reporters that back in the day when Phil Jackson was hired as coach, quote, "I kind of rolled my eyes," unquote. Why? Because she thought Jackson was weird. Because he liked to read so much that he would hand players books as gifts. So the moral of that part of the story, guys, is remember, no matter what a woman says, when it comes to hookups, she wants them buff and stupid. Now, eventually, for whatever reason, Jeanie took a shine to Phil, which makes me think that this is going to wind up being a romantic comedy. After all, we are in Hollywood. When Phil met Jeanie, here's the plot line. She's a former Playboy model who dreams of running an NBA team. He likes to sit in the lotus position while coaching basketball. Can they keep it platonic, or do opposites attract so much that they would risk everything to satisfy their romantic desires? As far as I know, Jeanie Buss does see herself as Meg Ryan. She is going to marry a comic after all. John Heyman, whose reputation is somewhere underneath the septic tank of American sports journalism, is reporting that Dodger players do not want Trevor Bauer back on the team. Now, the guys from the New York Post, you might know if you have a globe, he's 4 time zones away. He's on the East Coast. What does he know about the LA locker room? I would argue he doesn't know anybody in the LA locker room. Meanwhile, a guy from the LA Times says there is a chance that Bauer does pitch for LA because the Dodgers want to mull their options in seeking a trade, possibly, which is exactly what I've been saying all along. The Dodgers have until Friday to make a decision on the former Cy Young Award winner. I take no stance. I have no idea what the Dodgers are thinking. I'm simply telling you where their thought process could be. We mentioned the UCLA football autopsy. The Trojans do play tomorrow. The Times has assessed their future on the offensive line. The writer spoke at length with Justin Dedich, who will shift over to center next year. Dedich is sad. He said some of his friends on the offensive line after tomorrow, they're either not playing tomorrow due to injury or they've used up all their college eligibility. The writer has extrapolated from that the Trojans are in trouble because of lack of offensive line help, and I disagree. Way too premature to say that. USC on last week picked up a starting tackle from Florida in the transfer portal. Theoretically, he's a starter. We also mentioned Jonah Monheim, seen as a potential NFL starter. That's 2 linemen. Then you've got Dedich shifting over to center. He's a veteran. That's 3. And then there's Cortland Ford, who allegedly barely lost the starting left tackle job at the start of the year to Bobby Haskins. Cortland Ford takes over for Haskins. So by my count, that is 4 starting offensive linemen right there with a pretty decent resume. The only real question might wind up being left guard. Finally, Alex Edler reached a revered milestone in the NHL yesterday. He played his 1,000th game for the Kings in their stinker loss to Philadelphia. But you let me know what you think about today's game, Rams versus Chargers. Let me know what you would do to fix UCLA for next year. Not just offense or defense, but where you would go specifically to try to upgrade either one of those two units. And if you enjoy the content about LA sports, don't forget to like and subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We're talking LA sports every day. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We might be back later today with a recap of Rams Chargers. And Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.